Hi everyone, this is Françoise Lamotte for a new episode of the Digital Edge podcast with my friend Dominique. Hello Dominique.
Hey Françoise, hey everyone.
So today we are going to debate Claude versus ChatGPT to see, if there is a winner in the race of LLMs. But maybe before we get into that, I found some very interesting statistics, probably published by OpenAI. So ChatGPT today is being used by 700 million people. So that's a big number. And what was quite interesting is that only 27 of the inquiries are work related. So a lot of it has to do with, private questions. And they found that 29% is about practical guidance, 24% is about seeking information, and 24% is about writing. And when it's about, when it's at work, the proportion of inquiries related to writing is 40%. So that's the main usage. And of those, 2/3 is about editing text that has already been written rather than creating new content. I found also interesting the fact that only 4% use ChatGPT for programming, whether it's 33% for Claude. So maybe that's a big difference that we will talk about later. And the last statistic that was interesting is the percentage of users by level of education. It's 48% with people who have a graduate level, 46% for people who have a bachelor, and it drops to 37% for people who don't have a university degree. So it's really also, we could have imagined that AI would solve the education gap, but we see that it's still there. The higher the level of education, the higher the usage of ChatGPT.
Yeah,
So that was just to give an intro. And maybe before I pass the floor, it's very true that myself, I started using ChatGPT as my main LLM, and now I have switched to Claude that I find more relevant, more accurate, and giving me better results. What is your experience, Dominique?
Yeah, that's an interesting small sample, right?
Yes.
We were talking in leading up to this episode whether to see whether ChatGPT is still relevant, right? Because if you look at the news of what's there today, the hype for Claude is so great right now, right? It almost makes you feel like everybody has abandoned ChatGPT for Claude, and OpenAI's product is on the way out and obsolete, right? But I think it's another highlights that what is being published and what we see online is maybe not always exactly the reality, or it doesn't exactly create the perception of reality, and so a little bit further digging is necessary. What have you found in terms of usage right now? Has there been any changes with this recent Anthropic Claude AI hype that we've seen over even more so in the last couple of months?
Yeah, so it's true that I think that the recent updates of Claude related to coding has made a lot of hype. But actually, I asked the two LLMs to provide a comparison. I can share it on screen if you want. It's interesting to see that depending. Can you see my screen yet? Yes,
Yep.
It's coming. So it's really interesting to see that depending on the task that you are looking at, we see that Claude, ChatGPT have different attributes or levels. I mean, ChatGPT is still very strong in, for example, multimodal interactions, user experience. You see that Claude is gaining a lot of advantage in coding. I mean, it's not black and white. It's it's depending on the needs that you have.
Yeah, that's a really good side by side comparison.
Any surprise on this for you?
Not so much. I mean, I don't see anything that stands out as in something being particularly terrible. Maybe on the low end we have the consumer user experience is much better on ChatGPT than on Claude. And the speed and responsiveness is also indicated as much better for ChatGPT versus Claude, right? And I think what this highlights a little bit, and is also has been my personal experience, is that one tool is probably not good enough at this point, right? Because they have had their specific strengths, right? And of course, this doesn't even include Gemini, which
Yeah.
is also used by many people. There's, in the enterprise environment, we have Microsoft's Copilot, which gets a leg up just because it comes with the Microsoft product offerings, right? So you have a lot of companies that use Microsoft Office at work, and then people naturally just gravitate towards that because of data protections that are then built in and so forth, right?
Yeah. I think, what I find very useful is actually to use both. Sometimes I need to compare the two answers for accuracy. I start with one and then I ask the other one to check the sources to make sure that, it's not too good to be true. I think it's a good practice also to use at least two LLMs to make sure that the results are of good quality.
Yeah. So as we've said many times before, when it's important, check your answers, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that remains true today still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, obviously, it's very hard to keep track of the evolutions. I mean, every day I see new features, new applications. I mean, it's a never ending race to keep up with those evolutions. So I think it's about, trying and working with those tools and seeing what fits best. But when we hear about is ChatGPT obsolete, I think it's also related to probably some propaganda and some buzz on social media. I mean, first there was the issue with the US government and some political stand by one saying no, I don't want to work on this, and the other yes. So I think there was a movement of probably leaving ChatGPT. You told me you had looked at figures, and that was quite impressive.
Yeah, when I did a little bit of research on the topic, right, to see like, hey, is this real that ChatGPT is losing as many users as it seems,
Yeah.
right? And actually, quite surprisingly, some of the data that I found, from First Page Sage, which does analysis on market share on chatbots, they indicate that ChatGPT market share dropped from 78% to 60% from March to April. Now, again, right? Not sure how accurate this data is, and it's represented by traffic, but still, right? If you have such a huge drop in such a short amount of time, there must be something going on, right? Like you said, external factors like people maybe don't agree with the direction in which OpenAI is going with some of their business decisions, and on the other hand, right, the hype on the power user side of things, where a lot of software engineers have moved to Claude as their primary tool, right? Because they saw it a lot more valuable than what OpenAI was offering with their product. And so I think it's a combination of the two. But like you said, I think the fascinating things with this super fast iterations of product development and constant releases, right? While whereas maybe technologists are used to a new tool every week and new features and so forth, maybe for the general user it's not so easy, right? Because I work with a lot of people that are trying to learn these tools, and then they get frustrated on the one hand because it can't do as much as they think it can, which then prevents them from going back 2 weeks later because the features may now be there, right? The capabilities may be there. And so I think, right, it's a little bit of a disadvantage that it's changing so fast, because some people might get discouraged and then not go back to it again. But yeah, I think in terms of market share, we've debunked it, that it hasn't, ChatGPT hasn't disappeared just yet. There's still a lot of people, more than half of the users are using it. In the enterprise world, it might be a little bit different with additional offerings and so forth, but nonetheless, I think it will stick around for quite some time here.
So I think we, come to the conclusion that probably ChatGPT is not obsolete yet. And, given the amounts of investment behind, probably it's going to catch up. I think the race is not over. It's going to last for probably some months or years that, one is adding a new functionality and the other one is catching up. So I think this is not ending. Maybe I think at some point there is also the pricing issue that will come into play. Are people willing to pay for those tools? And it's true that sometimes I switched to ChatGPT because Claude is telling me that I've exhausted my limits because I don't have the premium version. So maybe that's another factor that will also influence the adoption.
Yeah, I think so. Great points. I think on the one hand, this convergence of tools, right? Everybody will try to separate themselves from the competition, of course, right, and to offer new and better things to interact. But the competition then will also pick up. Okay, it looks like Francoise is out. Hopefully, she'll be right back. Okay, there you are. Okay, back again. Yeah, I was just saying, right, as the tools evolve, the competition will continuously keep up as well, right? So I mean, we're going to be the beneficiaries, and all users will be, that your favorite tool effectively and eventually will likely be very similar to the one that the competition has, right? And it becomes more of a price battle, perhaps, right, where they're good enough for most users, and then you go to the one that doesn't cost anything or less than the competition. But I think the monetization question, I think, is still remains with these huge investments. The revenues probably need to catch up a lot before it's said and done, right? And we see some advertising entering the space, right? Other ways of monetizing. The usage limits are decreasing and they cost more and so forth, right? So it'll be interesting to see how this develops over time, and if it will continue to be attractive to the general population versus business usage, if it starts actually costing money out of pocket.
Do you believe that at some point there will be like a dominant player, like, we have, I don't know, Google for search, or, what do you think?
A dominant player, that's a great question. Right now, it seems that it's very level in the general sense, and I think it comes down to whether ChatGPT can maintain a quote unquote free offering, right? Or what their advertising inclusion will then mean to the user base, right? Is it going to turn off people too much? Is it going to start influencing the results that come out of ChatGPT, right? I mean, OpenAI says that's not going to happen, right? They'll still stay neutral, but who knows, right? Maybe at some point you can say, hey, give me recommendations that are good for me as a consumer, right? Maybe an option for now. And then you have to do less research, but it will give you the short answer to the product you should buy or the service you should consider, and take away all the other options, right? So, I mean, I think it's not too far-fetched that the information that is available on us will then be used / abused, however you may want to look at it, to optimize the experience, or to, again, monetize. Yes, exactly. To profit on our interest of doing less work, right?
Yeah, exact. Thank you so much, Dominic, for the discussion in a very dynamic environment again, and looking forward to our next episode.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Francoise. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more awesome episodes from the Digital Edge. See you next time.